What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with something a little bit different. I've brought Eric Patterson from theScore and an old buddy of mine on to talk through an article that he wrote, which is the 10 best single seasons for golfers of the last decade. So a little bit of a twist on some of the decade content that you've seen come out over the course of the last few weeks. I really like what Eric did here, so I brought him on to chat through that and maybe a little bit of an outlook onto 2020. These types of shows are something I want to do more of, where I just bring on guests and we talk about golf and fantasy and life and just kind of other things. So if there's someone out there specific that you'd like me to talk to, leave a comment or tweet at me. Let me know, and let me know what you want to hear about. These should be a lot of fun. And it is just going to be an audio version of this. So after this, I'm just going to put the logo up on the screen. You can minimize YouTube, or if you are listening on your podcast, it'll be just the same as everything else. All right. I hope you guys enjoy. Talk to you soon. All right. Welcome to the show, Eric Patterson from theScore. Happy New Year, sir. How are you?
Happy New Year, Rick. I'm doing well. Looking forward to 2020. Should be a good one. Hopefully it can match 2019.
I hope so. Yeah, the hope is that they keep getting better. Every year gets better. So
Bar has been set high.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Eric, we talked about this on the First Cut podcast, but I'm not sure a lot of people realize, like, our paths have crossed many times over the years. I mean, you were one of the original contributors to my site, DFS On Demand, along with like Kenny Kim and Brad Messer-Smith. Like, that was the crew. Like, I don't know what that was, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, time flies. I saw that Kenny just tweeted out he's been doing his podcast for 5 years. So I'd venture to say it's been about 4 years since we first linked up on Twitter there.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy that, the people that we meet on Twitter and like talk to so often and like send tweets at, and then like, oh yeah, I've never talked to that person in real life, or I've never seen that person in real life.
Never, yeah.
It's kind of crazy. Now, a lot of that is going to be taken care of at the DFS Open. There's like probably 50 people there that I interact with on a daily basis that I will actually see their face for the first time.
It is wild to think about that. Like, you consider these people acquaintances, friends, and like you've never seen them in person, in the flesh. So it's a weird world, but hey, it's one way to interact.
Yeah, beautiful. So Eric, you are now at theScore, which maybe it's just because I see everything that you put out there, but it feels like theScore is doing a lot more PGA and or golf content. Is that right? Am I imagining that?
Yeah, they're trying to, for sure. Right now it's just me there. So whatever you see golf wise, unless I'm like, away for a weekend or have a few days off, most of the stuff that they put out golf wise is from me, but they are making a conscious effort to, enhance their golf coverage. They see it as a growth sport. And, they brought me on 2018 because of that reason. So it's been a wild ride, and I'm looking forward to pumping out even more stuff in 2020 and hopefully to grow it even further.
Yeah, guys like you and me, I think are in a really good position because a lot of these companies are now investing in golf, which for the longest time, golf and baseball were the oldest fan bases, and there wasn't, I guess, much need for innovation or much need to get into more data or streaming or stuff like that. So I think we're in a really good spot, and and theScore, I use the app, but there's like a sports betting app too, right?
Yeah, we're rolling out like what you guys see with you have with like DraftKings and FanDuel. We have theScore Bet, which is available right now, I believe, only in New Jersey, but obviously plans to continue to grow that across all the states where gambling is legal. And then hopefully, they'll figure it out here in Canada, and it should be able to explode with the user base we have up here. But yeah, that's another area of growth they see for me specifically is sports betting, and specifically golf betting. So I'm definitely excited to see where that goes.
Beauty. Well, the reason I've got you here is, there's been a lot of decade in review, or look ahead to the next decade content over the past couple of weeks. But what an article that you wrote on theScore, it's decade in review, 10 best single year performances on the PGA Tour. And what I like about this is it is just a little bit different. It is looking and taking a single season and saying, where does this rank in the decade, which I think is an interesting way to look at it. How difficult was it for you to narrow it down to actually 10 of these single seasons?
Yeah, no, there's been a ton of, maybe too much. Some might argue too much decade review content, but for me, it was not maybe as hard as it might have seemed. There's definitely some standout years where you're just like, well, that's one of the best seasons I've seen in the past 5 years. So you just keep looking through the years, and maybe I don't remember all of them from 2010, 11, but it's not hard to find who dominated that year or who won Player of the Year. So it's pretty much figure out when Rory McIlroy popped, Koepka,
Mhm.
got to have a Tiger year in there, and I think it's deserved. So it on paper it might look a little difficult, but I felt ranking them was definitely harder than finding or identifying 10 kind of standout seasons.
That's interesting. Yeah, once you had your 10, then you had to put them in order. So you the way you started with this, and we don't have to spend too much time on each of these, but I want to talk about some of the more notable ones. But the 10th best season of the decade you have here as Dustin Johnson's 2016 season, which included the US Open win, the WGC Bridgestone Invitational, and the BMW Championship. He had 3 top 10s in majors, including that US Open win. Just one of his absolutely dominant seasons. Now, the thing that I think is notable out of DJ's 2016 might be DJ's 2017, which he made, I believe, $200,000 more, so 9.4 to 9.6 million. He had 3 wins in a row, but the 2017 season was the year where he falls down the stairs at the Masters, doesn't end up playing it. He was like trending in that direction, and he basically was a no-show in all of the majors then. So he didn't play at the Masters. He missed the cut at the US Open. Outside a top 10 finish at the PGA Championship, which is not great for DJ, and then a 54th at the Open Championship. So I assume that 2016 season, being able to actually capture a major victory is what gives his 2016 season an edge over that 2017 season.
Yeah, for Dustin Johnson, obviously I felt like I need to have one of his seasons in there just because of how dominant he was throughout the whole decade. I think him and McIlroy won 18 times is what I have here each. So obviously the 2 best players of the decade, maybe with Koepka in there. But yeah, the US Open win sets him apart. DJ did have that run in 2017 where it looked like he was on his way to maybe a top 2-3 season, but the old stumble down the staircase in Augusta got him. So
the old stumble down the staircase gets us every time.
quote unquote.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that book like 25 years from now for like the actual tell-all story of what happened that weekend in Augusta. But what's interesting about this, Eric, is this is the only Dustin Johnson season that you have on this list right here, 2016, and I I don't disagree with it, because some of these other guys had one off a pop season. We'll talk about a Jordan Spieth season later. We know about Brooks Koepka's seasons. The fact that DJ only has one on this list, I don't think is a knock. I think it's more of a testament to his actual consistency over the course of the decade.
Yeah, he wins so consistently, but it's like 2 or 3 a year, where some of these other guys have 5 wins. I don't think DJ had a 5-win season. So
He
it's
didn't.
like if I went to the top 20, he might have 4 or 5 top seasons there, but he never had that kind of outstanding season. But again, super consistent, and I felt I had to give him a nod here, as even if it is the 10 spot.
Yeah. So his 2010 to 2019, 2 wins, 1, 2, 1, 3, 4. Those are the 2 years we talked about. 3 and 2. So you're right. I mean, yeah, a lot, just a lot of winning spread out. So DJ ranks here at number 10 for his 2016 season. At number 9, Tiger Woods, and I believe this is also his only appearance on the list, for his 2013 season, in which he captured 5 wins. And for Tiger, his majors, did not win a major, made the cut in all of them, had a 4th place finish at the Masters, a 6th place at the Open Championship, and didn't really compete in the other 2. But this is kind of a classic Tiger season in a decade that he had a lot of bad years.
But yeah, definitely a lot of bad years, a lot of no-show years. Again, Tiger is probably a forgotten year where he won Player of the Year in 2013. But again, 5 wins. Not many players had that many wins on the PGA Tour in the decade. So boosted by his Players Championship, where I give that kind of like the 5th major, if you will, and just a classic dominate at the spots where you win at. What is that? Torrey Pines, Bridgestone, where he wins all the time, Bay Hill, where he wins all the time. So it's just kind of
Sawgrass.
maybe the most
Yeah.
textbook Tiger season of all. Just
Yeah, I'm trying to
pick your
do
spots.
quick math here. I believe his 5 wins in 2013 match the same number of wins he has had in the other years of the decade. 1 in 2019, 1 in 2018, 3 in 2012. That's it. So it really, like, literally half of his wins this decade came in 2013, which is kind of shocking because of what we know of the production of Tiger Woods and where we think he's going to go from there. But yeah, this really is the only possible year that you could have gotten in here when we start talking about some of these other names, right?
I mean, yeah, I could have squeezed his Masters victory in there with the Zozo, but I mean, 5 wins is pretty outstanding, and as good as the Master win was, just doesn't put it in the top 10 for the decade.
I agree. Now, we get the first appearance of Rory McIlroy here at number 8. Certainly will not be his last appearance on this list, which is crazy because the guy, clearly the player of the decade for me, but his 2019 season, this past season, ranks here number 8 for you. And, the wins are all here. Players Championship, Canadian Open, Tour Championship, WGC, HSBC. He only had that kind of that bad turnout at the Open Championship for his major season, but I think this was a well-deserved Player of the Year title for Rory McIlroy in 2019.
Yeah, no, there's again, as you'll kind of see as the list goes on, I still value results in major championships above, winning the Canadian Open. No offense to my nation's Open, but McIlroy, you'll see the next one right down is Koepka's 2019, which I still think personally is just a notch above. And the fact that McIlroy won the PGA Tour Player of the Year, whereas Koepka won the PGA Player of the Year. So it's kind of, that's how close it actually was. One's based on points, being the PGA Player of the Year, and the other is based on voting. So it's hard to, pick a side. I still will lean with Koepka's majors and probably always will, but I'm not taking anything away from how incredible McIlroy's year was and just how dominant he was, how consistent he was. His strokes gains numbers were up there with, Tiger Woods when he was, dominating the tour in the 2000s.
Yeah, we can absolutely lump these two together. I like that you put them back to back here. I think that's fair to show not only how close they were this year, but even historically how close they were when you look back at an actual decade. But I side with Rory on this. The consistency, the fact that he was basically top 10ing everything. You mentioned it. His 2019 season was it was the best non-Tiger strokes gained season ever. Also, you mentioned how the fact that the vote got split here between the PGA Player of the Year and the PGA Tour Player of the Year, which I believe is like the first time that's ever happened, or at least in recent memory. So even voters and even a lot of people were going back and forth on this. So to your point, I mean, Koepka's 2019 is also insane. His majors alone. T2 at the Masters, a win at the PGA Championship, a second place finish at the US Open, and then a T4 at the Open Championship is absolutely wild stuff. I mean, off the top of my head, the guys who have finished, top 5 in all 4 majors in a year, it's a very short list. I know Tiger's on it. I think Ricky Fowler is on it recently, but this is an accomplishment that does not get matched quite very often.
Yeah, hardly ever. And just going back, the last time, I have the list up here, the last time 2 different people won the PGA Player of the Year and the PGA Tour Player of the Year was in 1991, if my eyes are telling me the right story. Yeah, Corey Pavin and Fred Couples split it. So it's been a while. And, last season, it was a good year to split it because both players are very deserving. Just Koepka's major championships were just out of this world. Only matched in this decade by the person who holds the 1 spot on this list, and we'll get to that later. But
good tease. Not to blow the spoiler right there. That was good.
Yeah, it's probably not too hard to figure out, but we'll hold off. It's just unfortunate he only won twice. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a marquee event, but people will forget that, Sung Kang got him at the Byron Nelson. Or am I misremembering? I think Koepka was
No,
there.
Byron Nelson, that would have been Sung Kang, right?
Yeah. It just, and then he almost had one at the Honda Classic too. So it was close, but just not as good as it could have been. Obviously boosted by the PGA Championship. Again, had to be on the list, but not a top 5 season of the decade.
Yeah, we don't need to spend too much more time on this because I think the Rory Brooks thing has been beat to death. But
Yeah.
I think that the thing that people don't give enough credit for is I feel like Rory's win at like he won the FedEx Cup. Like I feel like that is always included in the bullet points on his resume, but he started 5 shots back. Like imagine another tournament like that is still crazy to me to think that they started that tour championship with who was it? It wasn't Justin Thomas. Somebody else. It might have been Justin Thomas at like 10 under par, and Rory's 5 under. And not only do you have to win a tournament with the 30 best players, on tour, you have to do it from 5 shots back. Like I'm not sure, and maybe just because this was the first year of the tour championship, like I think a lot of people were like, oh, he was only 5 shots back. That's not that big a deal. I think if we like fast forward and we have 100 years or even 10 years of tour championships where guys are spotted strokes, I don't think you're going to have a lot of comebacks from this far back.
No, I think, last year was definitely an outlier. And I think it's going to be dependent, on who, on who is holding that top spot and who is chasing. Because, Justin Thomas said it was extremely difficult for him to, see himself at the top of the leaderboard, like during a Wednesday practice round. And McIlroy is like maybe one of the best chasers in the world, if not the best. So it was just kind of a perfect combination of JT being a little inexperienced, kind of feeling uneasy about that starting position, and McIlroy just already licking his chops, knowing he has to come out and play extremely well. And, it panned out for season 1, but we'll see how it goes next year. It should be interesting.
Well, JT is a nice segue into the number 6 season on this list, which is Justin Thomas's 2017, which is another 5-win season, which were very rare in the decade. And he started it off quickly, man. Tournament of Champions, Sony Open. That's back-to-back first 2 events of the year. PGA Championship, the Dell Technologies Championship, and then, of course, he in basically the end of the year, CJ Cup. That's like all year long, 12 straight months. Justin Thomas was raising trophies, including the one major. This is where like this is one of the ones that I remember. Like I don't know why this season sticks out so much to me, but like when I was kind of doing this practice in my head, I'm like, what seasons would come into play here? And like this was one of the first, maybe not because it's the best, but I don't know why this is such a memorable one for me. Maybe because of I think the Sony Open had like that was the year he shot a 59 there. It's just a lot of moments for JT this season.
Yeah, it was like probably you could argue it's his breakout season. Justin Thomas is one of the best players in the world right now. So you try to figure out when he arrived onto the scene. And I would say this is it, highlighted by his PGA Championship win at Quail Hollow. It's 5 wins. It's incredible. I will kind of caveat this by saying it's not 5 wins in the same quote unquote season, but it's 5 wins in the same calendar year. So the
Right.
PGA Tour kind of screws around this list. So I was kind of looping seasons together to create a full year, but doesn't take away from the fact he dominated in 2017.
Yeah, that's actually a great designation because with the way the wraparound season is, these are actually physical calendar years, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which makes sense when you're doing a decade type list.
Yeah, I couldn't be put in 2016, 2017. It get way too confusing. And anyways.
Yeah. All right. So number 5 on this list, Jason Day, 2015. And, for Jason Day, who, I ranked a top 10 players of the decade list. And Jason Day did make my list, and it's almost entirely because of like this season right here. And even like there's like an 18-month period throughout the middle of the decade where he won like 7 times in 17 starts, which is absolutely crazy. But Jason Day's 2015 Farmers Insurance Open win, Canadian Open, PGA Championship, the Barclays, and the BMW Championship, 3 top 10s in the majors. Like this is absolutely peak Jason Day that I don't know if a lot of people realize how good he was when he got to the number 1 player in the world.
Yeah, he went on a run. I remember it vividly because I was in like a FedEx Cup playoff pool with some friends, and I took Jason Day and he won 2 straight and just cleaned up. as you notice, like the Canadian Open was later in the season there too. So you went Canadian Open, PGA, 2 playoff events. That's like in a month and a half window. So just a dominant run that definitely deserves some recognition. And it's going to be forgotten just because I believe of his recent fall off and struggles. Although he did win a couple times in 2018, most people will remember what's happened lately. So Day was, yeah, he reached the pinnacle of golf here in 2015, and I edged him out over JT's season just because of those major performances.
Yeah, 18 of 20 cuts that season, the 5 wins, and similar to what the stat we mentioned about Tiger, Jason Day only has 5 wins since then. So when you even count in 2016, which was still, he was peak kind of number 1 player in the world type stature, you loop that year in, and you still only match what he did in 2015 in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So I don't know. What do you think about Jason Day? I think 2020 is kind of a pivotal year for him, to kind of see if it's the back, if this is just the tail end of his career and he'll never get back to it. Where do you stand on the Jason Day spectrum?
I mean, he's only 32, so it's hard to believe that. I mean, Tiger's body's kind of breaking down too, and everyone's already kind of pointed at Day being his swing is so violent and so rigid that his back is just going to get abused, which is it's apparent now, and now he's kind of using it as like he's pulling out of President's Cups with the back injury. It's just there's always like a cloud around him. You never know what Day is going to show up, when he's going to show up. It's very confusing and kind of sad to see because he at one point was part of the big 4, and now he's outside of the top 40 in the world, I believe. So it's been a quick and abrupt fall from grace for Day, but I think, I don't know, he just has to get healthy and maintain his health. But he's doing all these like weird, balloon techniques and stretching techniques, and it's almost like being healthy is way more important to him than his golf game. Obviously, that's fine, but I feel like he focuses so much on his health that he's kind of distracted, and deservedly so, because bad back at 32 is very concerning.
Yeah, he is, I think, good or bad, one of the most interesting players for this year, because I literally have no idea what's going to happen. Like if he won 2 or 3 times, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. And if he that dropped even further out of the world rankings, yeah, I think he's in like the 40s now. I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense too. Like I have no idea what to expect, so I'm just mostly interested in following along.
Yeah, I'll if he does win, I'll tell you this: I will have no shares of him in any form of wagering or anything along those lines, because it's just going to be so hard to predict.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same boat. A guy I will have a ton of shares of, your number 4 single season of the decade, back on the list for a second time, Rory Mcilroy's 2012. It's hilarious. The picture that you have in here with this trophy that he's holding, like literally almost bigger than he is. 5 wins in the year: Honda Classic, PGA Championship, Deutsche Bank Championship, BMW Championship, and then the DP World Tour, which is the Euro. That's still or was then the Race to Dubai, like the finals, right?
Yeah, that's like, again, I threw that on there just because it is a marquee event on the European Tour, and McIlroy is the only one on this list who is really playing on the European Tour, so I figured it deserves some recognition. This was, in my opinion, McIlroy's coming out party in America. I know he won the U.S. Open the year prior, but this is a big season for him, and just kind of his emergence into United States golf.
Yeah, this was the massive year. 11.3 million, which is a huge number now, and it was a huge number 8 years ago when you're talking about like the purses and things like that. But yeah, I like that you kept the Euro Championship on there, because you're right, that gets a star-studded field. I mean, that's the championship of the Euro Tour. You always get the big names over there. This is not like the Irish Open or something like that. I think it's well deserved, and you're right. We're not done with Rory, so we'll hang tight on Rory. I think we've got one more season for him, but a guy who shows up for a second time, Brooks Koepka, number 3, his 2018 season. And if you want to talk about coming out parties, this was the coming out party for Brooks Koepka, right?
Yeah, this was his kind of, the year where he proved 2017 U.S. Open wasn't a fluke, and winning the U.S. Open for a second straight year and then backing it up with the PGA Championship was, this is his I'm number 1 in the world stance year. So
yeah,
it was an impressive run, one of the few multi-major seasons of the year, or of the decade, sorry, and it's his best season of the decade for sure.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I had this up a couple of days ago. Of the decade, there was only like, I want to say there was 4 guys who won multiple majors. It would have been Koepka, Rory,
Spieth.
Bubba. Did Bubba win both of his? Spieth.
Oh, you're saying in the whole decade?
Yeah, in the whole decade, right?
Yeah,
So I'm saying
yeah.
to do it in one
Bubba
season.
definitely would have.
Yeah, so I'm saying to do it in one season is like even crazier because there's only a handful of guys that had multiple majors in the entire decade. All 40, you have 40 shots at it. So for Kepka's to come in here, and I like your note about proving the 2017 US Open was not a fluke, because we see that occasionally, right? Like we're going to see what Shane Lowry backs up his Open Championship victory with this year, and we're going to see if it goes down as oh, that was a little fluke and he's an okay player or whatever. But this is where Koepka asserted himself exactly right. This was where you got like Koepka swag, where he was like, okay, I don't have any rivals. I check off, half of the field when I get here. I don't need to warm up. I can show up 45 minutes before my tee time. Like this is the Koepka that we all know now. This is when we first got a taste of it.
Yeah, so he got his fake teeth this year, the new smile, the new confidence. This was a big season for Koepka, 2018. So I personally hope it returns in 2020. We'll see how dominant he is, but the knee's a little concerning. Just another guy who's already showing signs of health concerns. And it's worth noting in 2018, this is the year he skipped the Masters with a wrist injury, and then he came out and won 2 of the remaining 3 majors. So just imagine what could have been if he did play at Augusta.
Yeah, this is another storyline that I'm also very intrigued about. Is Koepka has built this. I don't want to say it's a facade, because I honestly think this is what he believes, but he has built this narrative around only majors matter, and also like I have no rivals. And then after that whole like I have no rivals thing, like immediately Tiger won, Rory won, and JT won, and it's like, oh no, just kidding. Like you do have some guys out here who are also big boys, and when you yourself, like the media, we're already bad enough at this, Eric, where we score you on your majors alone. If you start doing that, like majors are hard to win. If they start drying up because this ridiculous pace that he's on, I just feel like we will compare. He'll be compared against this 2018 version and this 2019 version, even though he could have a bunch of really good years moving forward.
Yeah, he's set himself up for some like serious criticism in the coming years if he, if he's not winning majors or contending in majors, and then he also isn't, quote unquote, showing up practicing for these other events. He could be coming up dry, and people will be wondering what happened to him, when really it's probably the same guy. But he's set the bar so high, and he's told us that's his, that's all he cares about. And then at the same time, like, I don't want to give him a free pass for these other tour events where, you're a professional golfer, show up and compete. If you don't want to be there, don't play in it. He's like, if he plays poorly in an event, you'll be like, he just didn't care. It's kind of like a cheap cop-out type thing, which is not a lot of players have that type of luxury. And he's kind of made it his thing where it's like, if he comes 50th at the Canadian Open, like he has the last couple of years, it's gonna be like, well, he just doesn't care about it. And then it's kind of, I don't know.
It's a dangerous
kind of
game.
Unfair for the other players. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a dangerous game, and then you're eventually going to have to answer for it. So I don't know if that's this year. But yeah, I mean, the golf is good when he's out there swagging around, but he's going to have this guy, his final appearance on the list, Rory Mcilroy. He shows up 3 times on your list, the most of any player here. His 2014 season ranks as the number 2 best season of the decade. 4 victories, BMW PGA Championship, that's on the Euro side, the Open Championship, a WGC, the Bridgestone, and a PGA Championship. So 2 majors. He had a top 10 at the Masters, a top 25 at the US Open, the WGC. This is just like all the big events for Rory. He didn't waste any of his wins anywhere.
No, and the BMW PGA Championship on the European Tour is, what they call their flagship event, kind of like the Players' Championship of the PGA Tour. So another massive win there. Again, this is boosted by 2 major championships back to back in that season. So just another reason why McIlroy is the best player of the decade. And yeah, 2014, first time he won the his only Open Championship win as well. So pretty cool season for him. And I'd venture to say he would agree this is probably his best season.
Yeah, I think so. Now, I mean, imagine, okay, so what would he have to do? If we make this, if we extend this out the next 5 or 10 years and we take a, 20, like what would he have to do to beat these 3 years that he's already had in here? I mean, he's going to have to win multiple majors again. He would probably have to complete the career Grand Slam by winning the Master. I don't know how he can have another better than 2014 season, but what would it have to be?
Masters definitely has to be on that list. I don't think he can go win another PGA championship and put together 4 or 5 more wins. I think he knows that, and everyone else kind of viewing his career as a whole knows that the Masters is the last, thing that he needs. How about a green jacket, Open Championship, and the Olympic gold medal? That might get it done.
Oh, mama. Yeah. Okay. I forgot about the Olympics because you only get a crack at that at once every 4 years. Oh, wow. That would be okay. Yeah, that would be it. The Olympics, the Open Championship, especially, after Portrush, that disaster there, and the career Grand Slam with the jacket. So it then checks off 2 majors, the Olympic gold. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's a great season
right there. Oh my God. I'm like sweating just thinking about that. That's a really good
The Open Championship and I believe the Olympics are pretty close in the schedule, maybe back to back. So you could easily ride a Open Championship win into the gold medal with some form. So
yeah, you just get hot for a couple of weeks and you come home with a bunch of trophies.
Yeah. Someone could do it this year. That'd be sweet.
Oh my gosh, I can't handle it. All right.
Tiger?
If Tiger does it, shut it down. It's over, man.
Tiger with a gold medal around his neck, standing on the podium is poof.
Yeah, so we don't fathom. Get you know how this works, right? Every list for the past 20 years, every trivia question, every best of, the answer is always Tiger Woods, right? If someone asks you a golf trivia question, just if you say Tiger Woods, you've gotten it correct 65% of the time. It's crazy that we are now going to start to see him do things he's never done before. Even the president's, the captaincy, right? That was a weird, different way to see Tiger. And to see him even at an Olympics, let alone winning the thing, I think is going to be weird. It's going to be awesome. It's just for the past 20 years, we haven't been able to see him do some of these cool things. And we're going to get that here in 2020.
Yeah. Tiger came onto the scene. He was the youngest to ever do it. He was the youngest to ever, win 10 times, 20 times. Now it's going to be the oldest Olympic champion, or he's the oldest Open champion. So he has all of these to check off still. And hopefully his body can hold up so we can see those come to fruition.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Here it is. The number 1 spot, best single year performance of the last decade. It comes from 2015. It comes from Jordan Spieth. This is really an unbelievable year. 5 wins, Valspar, Masters, US Open, John Deere Classic, and then he capped it with the Tour Championship and the FedEx Cup. So his major season, very Brooks-esque, a win, T4, and a second place finish. I don't think it's that close. This is very easily the best season or the best year of the decade, right?
Yeah, I could have put a gap between McIlroy's number 2 and Spieth here. This is just something I don't think we'll see for, this is Tiger 2000s era type stuff where he's contending in all the big events. He was kind of gifted a 3-putt by DJ at the US Open. But still, you can't take anything away from when you win 2 majors and 5 times, FedEx Cup, Player of the Year, all the accolades. And to do it, I believe he was probably 21 years old here, 22. So it's a pretty wild time to racking up all these tournament wins.
What's also crazy is if you go through his logs for that year, he had a bunch of second place finishes too. He finished second at Valero, second at the Shell Houston, second at the Dean and DeLuca, which is now that Fort Worth Invitational type thing. We talked about the second at the PGA Championship, and then a third at Memorial. We talk about top 10s a lot, but this is even just being 1 or 2 shots back of having I don't know, an 8-win season, a 9-win season. This is almost almost like the worst he could have done. Like when you put yourself in like the top 3 this many times, like 5 wins is almost the worst he could have done. This could have very easily, if everything goes right, been like 8 or 9.
Yeah, like I think I have it here, 17 of 26 top tens. That's a ton of golf to be playing as well. But if you narrow that down to the top fives, I would venture to say it would still be around 12 to 26 top fives. So it was just he was in the hunt almost every time he teed it up, which is extremely rare. And like you said, a couple shots here or there, and he could have had 7, 8, 9 wins.
Yeah, it's 12 top 4 finishes,
Wow.
and 15 top 7, which is like, yeah, that is very much
first page of the leaderboard every time.
Every single time. Yeah. And in all of the biggest events. It's a really incredible season that, again, while it is still like, I think is very clearly the number 1 season here, I feel because we live in a world where we're now 4 years removed from this or 5 years removed from this, and everyone forgot about it. And it certainly doesn't help that, now he's another guy who's, in risk of falling out of the world's top 50. And you might start not, all of these wins that he's accumulated from 2015, 2017, like they're all they've all have fallen out or are falling out of his official world golf ranking. He is, to me, by far the most interesting guy for 2020, just because in the same way of Jason Day, if he wins 2 majors, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. And if he just drops to 100 in the world, that could also make sense.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you mentioned Jason Day. This is also Day's season where he had 5 wins. So Spieth and Day combined for 10 wins that year, and now they're both outside the top 35 in the world. So it's
holy crap.
If you would think
about that,
look back at that in 2015, because Day won 2 FedEx Cup playoff events, but didn't win the FedEx Cup because of Spieth's incredible run. So it was just those 2 dominated that year, and now they're both massive question marks heading into 2020, which isn't that isn't that long ago. So pretty wild.
The win at Augusta and the win at the US Open for Jordan Spieth, he was still ranked 2nd in the world at that time, which I assume is behind Jason Day. And that just goes to show that both of those guys were just stockpiling wins at an unbelievable clip. I mean, they won like 25% of all of the tournaments that year.
It's pretty wild.
Wow. Okay. That was a lot of fun. Eric, were there any other seasons, not to put you on the spot here, and I can't think of any, but were there any honorable mention seasons? Were there any ones that just missed out, or was it definitely these 10 and then you just had to put them in order?
I think we talked about it earlier. It was DJ's 2017 where he had 4 wins. Yeah. I just gave him a boost for the US Open. I did want to give Fowler an honorable mention for, I think it was 2014, where
was that the year where he top 5'd all the majors?
Yeah, he top 5'd all the majors, but in peak Fowler form, he did not find the winner's circle. So
classic.
Yeah, it was a easy cut, but definitely a season worth remembering. I'm trying to think. Maybe we've run a little too long, but I'm trying to think of who can have one of these types of years in the next 5 years. I'm kind of narrowing the window, because like Spieth in 2015, he had this season, but there was no Justin Thomas, no Jon Rahm.
True.
Some of these guys that are starting to peak right now that he didn't really have to contend with. Tiger wasn't around, so
yeah, literally all of these. Yeah, because literally all these guys on this list are now like, outside of Jason Day and Jordan Spieth, but they're still fine or whatever, like at their absolute peak right now. So you've got
so hard to do now.
Yeah, and the tour is so deep, and even the young guys coming up, they're stealing wins from places. Yeah, it's actually a really good point. We might see, less and less of these crazy type. I mean, there was a time when, when Tiger was winning like 8 or 9, like Vijay Singh won like 8 or 9 times in a year 15 years ago or something like that. Like that's probably just not happening for the foreseeable future.
No, and it'll have to take some serious run of good form combined with, injuries for other guys, or, other guys just not being able to live up to their potential. But just so deep that there's so many guys. You see odds boards now, you're like, holy smokes, any of these top 20 dudes can win this week. And, back in 2015, it was only 2 guys that seemed to be able to win every other week. So it's good for the tour that it's that deep, but you're not going to probably have that run of dominance that we've kind of been accustomed to for the last 10 years.
I love it. Eric Patterson at @EPatGolf on Twitter. Follow him, Eric. What do you have going on with theScore? What do you want the people to know about?
No, I just, download the app, use the app, click my articles. That's all I can really ask. Not a lot of self promotion. I
Follow you
just
on
want to
Twitter.
say, yeah,
Go
follow
ahead.
me on Twitter. I just wanted to say a big congrats to you though for your new position at CBS. Hosting that podcast is pretty sweet. So it's awesome to see someone like you, who we've kind of grown up in the industry together, that you're breaking out and taking on some huge roles. So big ups to you.
Yeah, thanks, brother. I really, really appreciate that. It's something I am super stoked about, and just not even for me, but kind of what we talked about, just like the industry. Like it just feels like not like this industry is a startup, but like kind of like that, right? Where it's like, oh, well, things are going in the right direction. The major networks are starting to figure this out, and younger people are getting into it. Like it has that kind of like Silicon Valley type vibe to it. So I think it's good for everybody. But yeah, I'm super stoked about the future of where our little community's headed for the next couple of years.
Yeah, we've been doing our thing online for a while now, and it's nice that people are starting to realize that.
Right. Cool, man. Well, Eric, much appreciated. I'm sure we'll talk soon, and take care.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Good luck this week in Maui.
Thank you.